I can hear you, Taryn, but I had not heard you before that last statement.
Yes.
Yeah, the audio seems to be working fine. Do we have a court reporter? Okay. Okay, Ms. Sims,
Yes, I am here.
Are you ready to start the transcript?
Yes, I am.
Okay, then we will go on the record. Good morning, everyone. We're here for Public Service Commission Docket 2135-1, Rocky Mountain Power's application for approval of the 2021 Energy Balancing Account. Participating from the Public Service Commission are myself, Thad LeVar, and Commissioners David Clark and Ron Allen. Why don't we go to appearances from Rocky Mountain Power next?
Good morning. This is Emily Wegener for Rocky Mountain Power. And with me on the Google Meet, I have available the 3 witnesses that have filed testimony in this matter: Robert Meredith, Jack Painter, and Brad Richards. Mr. Richards will be presenting the stipulation for the company today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wegener. For the Division of Public Utilities.
And good morning. I'm Justin Jetter with the Utah Attorney General's Office, and I'm representing the Utah Division of Public Utilities. The division intends to call one witness today, Gary Smith. I don't have a list of all of the participants, but there's probably a few other folks from the division on joining the meeting today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jetter. Is there anyone else here who wants to make an appearance for any other party? I'm not seeing or hearing anything from anyone. So is there any other preliminary matter before we move to Rocky Mountain Power's first witness?
Just initially, I'd like to say we appreciate the flexibility of the commission allowing us to do this virtually. As it turns out, we didn't need to have our out-of-state witnesses travel, but with a little bit of fluidity in the COVID situation right now, we do really appreciate the flexibility to convert this hearing to a virtual one.
Thank you, Mr. Jetter. Ms. Wegener, then, you want to go ahead to your witness?
Yes, before I call him, I would like to move to admit our testimony. I was reviewing this stipulation and realized that we did not agree to that already, and I want to move to admit that the direct response, supplemental, and surrebuttal testimony of Jack Painter, along with his associated exhibits, the direct testimony of Robert Meredith, and the response and surrebuttal testimony of Brad Richards. As I mentioned, Mr. Richards is presenting our stipulation, but he won't be presenting his testimony today.
Okay, and before I address this motion, it looks like we have one commissioner who can't hear the hearing. So why don't we pause for a minute and see if we can just resolve that in a moment or two. Commissioner Clark, I just saw a telephone number join the call. Is that you? You're muted. So if you're trying to respond to me and I cannot unmute you from my screen.
Chair LeVar, can you?
Yes, I can hear you now, Commissioner. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. I've been trying to unmute and it wouldn't work, but you can hear me. Apologize everyone for the delay. I should have tested my audio.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. So we'll go back to Ms. Wegner has made a motion to admit into evidence the testimony of their three witnesses that were the written testimony that was filed in advance of the hearing. Mr. Jetter, do you have any objection to that motion?
No objection.
Okay, the motion's granted. Ms. Wegner, if you'll go ahead.
Thank you. The company calls Brad Richards.
Good morning, Mr. Richards. Can you hear us?
Good morning. Yes,
Do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Wegner.
Mr. Richards, can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, it's Brad Richards, BradRichards.
What is your position with the company?
I am the Vice President of Thermal Generation.
What are your responsibilities in that position?
I supervise the operations and maintenance of the company's thermal generation fleet, which includes coal, natural gas, and geothermal generating facilities.
How long have you held this position?
I began in September of 2021.
And what were your responsibilities before this position?
Prior to this, I was the Managing Director of Gas and Geothermal Generation. In that capacity, I supervised the operations and maintenance of the company's geothermal and natural gas-fired generating facilities.
Did you prepare and submit response and rebuttal testimony in this proceeding?
Yes.
And were you involved in reviewing the settlement stipulation that was entered between the company and the Division of Public Utilities?
Yes.
Can you please provide a summary of the stipulation?
Yes. Good morning, Chair LeVar, Commissioner Allen, and Commissioner Clark. I'll be providing a summary of the company's 2021 EBA proceedings and its settlement with the Division of Public Utilities, which I'll refer to in this summary as the division. On March 15th, 2021, the company filed an application under Tariff Schedule 94 to request approval to recover deferred costs through its energy balancing account. Based on a later update, the company's request was for an adjustment to base costs of $6.6 million. The division hired Daymark Energy Advisors to conduct an audit of the company's filing. On November 5th, 2021, Daymark filed its audit and recommended a disallowance of $53,873 related to two outages, one at Gadsby Unit 2 and one at Hunter Unit 3. Daymark also recommended an increase to the company's request of $34,267 based on a corrected calculation of coal costs for the company's Wyatt plant. These recommendations resulted in a net decrease of $19,606 to the company's request. The company contested the audit findings that the outages were a result of imprudence and contested the method of calculating the replacement power costs for the outage at Gadsby Unit 2. The company also provided a correction to Daymark's calculation of replacement power costs for Hunter Unit 3. As a result, the revised calculations, the total costs for the two outages raised by DPU rose to approximately $129,000. In rebuttal testimony, the division revised its recommended outage adjustment to approximately $131,000, bringing its total recommended reduction to the company's requested recovery to $96,800. In the settlement stipulation, the company and the division agreed to an unspecified adjustment in the amount of $15,000, bringing the company's total adjustment to $6,625,339. As part of the settlement, the company agreed to document the significant event reports it creates in response to certain outage events, and that they've been received and reviewed by management across its geothermal fleet or generation fleet, which the division and other parties can review in future EBA proceedings. The parties also agreed that the current EBA rates will remain in place through May 1st, 2022. Collections between March 1st and April 30th will be around $6 million, which closely matches the $6,625,339 agreed to in the stipulation. The purpose of this arrangement is to provide better rate stability for customers, given the company anticipates requesting interim rates go into effect around May 1st, 2022, and that the company also anticipates a significant shortfall in its 2022 EBA. With this provision, customer rates would decrease on March 1st, 2022, and increase on May 1st, 2022, if interim rates go into effect. The company believes the stipulation is just and reasonable in result and requests the Commission approve it. Thank you, and this concludes my summary.
Thank you. I have no further questions for this witness, and he's available for cross-examination and questions from the Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Jetter, do you have any questions for this witness?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Allen, do you have any questions for Mr. Richards?
No questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark, do you have any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you very much.
I don't either. So thank you for your testimony this morning, Mr. Richards.
Thank you.
Ms. Wagner, anything else from Rocky Mountain Power?
No, nothing further from the company.
Thank you. Mr. Jetter?
Thank you. The division would like to call and have sworn in Gary Smith.
Good morning, Mr. Smith. Can you hear us?
I can.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Jetter.
I think I'd like to actually, before I start with Mr. Smith, just make a motion at this point to enter the division's pre-filed written testimonies into the record. There was direct testimony from Gary Smith and direct testimony from division witnesses DiDomenico and Kohler, and rebuttal testimony from division witnesses DiDomenico and Kohler.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, do you have any objection to that motion?
No objection.
Okay, thank you. The motion's granted.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, would you please state your name and occupation for the record?
Gary Smith. I'm a utility technical consultant for the Division of Public Utilities.
Thank you. And have you had an opportunity to, I guess, review the settlement stipulation filed in this docket?
Yes, I have.
And have you prepared a brief statement summarizing the division's position in support of that stipulation?
I have.
Please go ahead.
Good morning. On March 15th, 2021, Rocky Mountain Power filed its annual EBA application for the calendar year 2020 deferral period with the Commission. On June 14th, 2021, the company filed a request for an increased total recovery of $6.6 million to correct a misallocation of loads and sales due to a partial meter failure at the Treasurton substation. This requested amount includes a correction for the prior EBA deferral period from July 2019 through December 2019. Based on its audit, Daymark and the DPU recommended a total revised adjustment to reduce the company's revised proposal by $96,842 on a Utah allocated basis. In addition to the recommended outage and replacement power cost adjustment, Daymark found that the company's lack of emphasis on providing plant-specific evidence of what it is doing to minimize outage durations to be of concern. The company should make every effort to ensure that learnings from the outages are properly shared across the fleet to help proactively minimize future outages. The division, the Utah Office of Consumer Services, the Utah Association of Energy Users, and Western Resource Advocates engaged in good faith negotiations with Rocky Mountain Power. Based on these negotiations, a settlement stipulation signed by the company and the division was recently filed with the Commission. The OCS, UAE, and WRA are not opposed to the settlement. The company has summarized the stipulation, so I will address only a few portions or provisions of particular import to the division. The parties agree to an unspecified adjustment of $15,000 to the company's revised request for a total recovery of $6,625,339. The principle of the adjustment is consistent with the division's position and testimony that the company's recovery should be reduced. The parties agree that the company will ensure receipt and review of the significant event reports it creates in response to certain outage events. The company will provide the reports and a record of their dissemination and review available to parties during review of the annual EBA filings. For prior EBAs and in this year's EBA, the division has sought process improvements that would result in outage-related information being shared by the company to potentially improve processes in other plants, not just at the plant that experienced the outage. The parties agree that the current EBA rates under Schedule 94 shall remain in place until April 30th of 2022. The parties expect collections to be approximately $6.6 million between March 1st, 2022 and April 30th, 2022, which closely matches the $6,625,339 agreed to in this stipulation. Because of the large shortfall in collection for 2021 expenses, the company intends to seek interim rate treatment to begin recovering part or all of the shortfall. It is in the public interest to collect the comparatively small 2021 EBA shortfall on an expedited basis before any interim rates for the 2022 might begin to be collected. The division recommends that the commission approve the settlement stipulation. As a whole, it is just and reasonable in result and in the public interest. This concludes my statement.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I have no further questions, and Mr. Smith's available for cross-examination or questions from the commission.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, do you have any questions for Mr. Smith?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Clark?
I have no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Allen?
Thank you. No questions.
And I don't either, so thank you for your testimony this morning, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Mr. Jetter, anything else from the division?
Nothing further from the division. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to pose a question to Mr. Jetter and Ms. Wagner. That seems like if we were to approve the stipulation to make it to be able to effectuate it, we would need to do so before the March 1st to April 30th period begins. Are there any other timing sensitivities around our potential approval of this stipulation?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think there are for the division. I would expect that the biggest timing sensitivity might be the billing system for the company, and if we're retaining the same surcharge for the extra 2 months, that seems like it's probably a pretty perfunctory thing to leave it in place, I guess. But I'm just speculating on that. Other than that, I don't have another reason to have a time constraint on an order.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from either of you or from Commissioner Clark or Commissioner Allen? Okay, well, thank you for your participation in the hearing today and for all the work that always goes into settlement agreements.